Well, we've made it. We have a couple of lessons left in the summer session. Congratulations! Unfortunately, this might be the most challenging part of our time together because we're dealing with persuasion. This lesson is going to expose you to the process of influencing, changing, or reinforcing listeners' ideas, attitudes, beliefs, or behaviors. This can be a little challenging because you're attempting to either change the audience's mind or to call them into some sort of action. To begin this lesson, I'm asking that you read chapters 9, 16, and 17. Those are the final chapters of reading for the summer session. For an additional learning tool, I've placed the chapter 9, 16, and 17 PowerPoint in here. And then to give you a frame of reference, I've placed the guidelines for the researched persuasive speech in here. This speech won't be due until Friday, August 3rd, but again, I'm putting things into context for you and then also giving you an opportunity to start working ahead. So read through the guidelines. This speech will be the highest speech and point value because we're building off of elements that we've been working with, but we're adding some new ones in there. Specifically, methods of persuasion and structure and organization or type of persuasion. I've placed the evaluation sheet in there. This will be how I will assess you. And then there's an example in here. This is from a student that I have had in the past, so I think it's a wonderful example. It's the exact same speech that I'm having you all do that this particular student did, and they also did that in a summer session like you all are doing. So watch that, and then you're going to submit your topic for me to view, and to do that, I'm just asking that on a Word document, you identify the topic, and then identify what your general purpose will be, your specific purpose, your central idea. Save that all on that same document to your computer or your USB, and then submit to the Dropbox that's attached by Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Next, you'll see the guidelines for the audience analysis. This particular audience analysis is worth 11 points. Let's open it up and I'll show you why. You are going to be creating a questionnaire that has at minimum 4 questions. 2 questions assessing the audience's knowledge, 2 questions assessing the audience's interest as it relates to your topic. Make sure that you provide directions on how to answer the questions. Make sure that the questions are a variety, so you want to have some fixed alternatives, some scale questions, some multiple choice, maybe an open-ended one in there. And you're going to submit to, and I have to update that, I see. Give me just a minute. Okay, so that's been updated. So the questions will be due on Saturday, July 29th. I see here that I messed up again. There we go. And then, save that. Your replies, you need to reply to at least 4 other classmates' posts, and that'll be due by Sunday, the 29th. So you'll submit those to the Dropbox here, and you'll go in and you'll review the results after students have had an opportunity to answer your questions. You're going to then write a 1 to 2 sentence summary about what those questions told you about your topic and the audience, and then you're going to use that information to put into your persuasive speech, just like you did for the informative speech and for the speech of tribute. After that, review the guidelines for the outline that I'm having you do. Again, this outline will be due with your speech, which will be on Friday, August 3rd. Our semester ends on Friday, so that's when it will be due. I've posted an example here. You can feel free to use this example for your own, but you have to make sure that you remove any information that's not pertaining to your speech, so then that way it doesn't cause any confusion on the outline that you submit. And again, that'll be due on Friday, August 3rd. We're incorporating a visual aid for this speech, so you're going to be exploring effective and ineffective uses of visual aids. To assist you, I've created this tip sheet, so you can just open this Word document. And this walks you through if you're going to be using PowerPoint presentations. This is a helpful guide to help you to avoid death by PowerPoint. So read through that, and if you are using a PowerPoint slide for your presentation, make sure that you take these guidelines into consideration when you're creating your own. Then you have 2 activities related to presentational aids. I didn't name them anything fancy. In fact, they might be a little confusing because one is presentational aid exercise 1 and then presentational aid exercise 2. Where it gets confusing is when you're submitting them to the Dropbox. Just make sure that you're attaching presentational aid exercise 1 to the Dropbox for exercise 1 and the same for exercise 2. So let's look through this together. This first activity is asking you to, we'll put our name on there first. Oops. Okay. That's annoying. There we go. Make it pretty simple. All right. Many speeches can benefit from presentational aids. You are to generate a list of at least 3 presentational aid ideas for each of the 5 topics listed below. Be specific with your idea and make certain that your responses include at least 3 different types. So if my topic is on Brett Favre, my first visual aid might be to use a projector to project his picture, and then I'm using this as a tool to help students visualize who I'm talking about. Okay? All right. Oh my goodness, I can't type today. All right. Another visual aid, maybe I'm going to discuss his statistics. So I might want to put together a bar graph of his football statistics to show my audience what he accomplished in his career. Something like that. So you'll just go through each of the topics, and for each of the topics you're going to list 3 presentational aid ideas for each of them. You're going to write right on the worksheet. You'll save it to your computer or your USB and then submit to the Dropbox titled Presentational Aid Exercise 1. Let's look at Presentational Aid Exercise 2. All right, for this one, I'll just type my name in. And then you, this one is going to be a little bit different. So what you're going to be doing is you'll see the topics are essentially kind of the same, right? And in the areas provided, you're going to identify the type of visual aid that you're going to use. But this time, you're going to talk about 2 strategies for using that visual aid. Here's an example. Brett Favre. Type of presentational aid, picture of Brett Favre. Strategy, use the multimedia projector to display the picture, so not to circulate around the room. And then 2, display the photo at the beginning of the speech to make certain the audience understands who he is. So unlike the other one where you're just identifying the types of visual aids that you could use, this time you're identifying 1 and then 2 strategies for it. Save it to your computer or your USB and then submit to the Dropbox titled Presentational Aid Exercise 2. And then for me, I'm asking you on a separate Word document to list 3 possible visual aids you might use for your persuasive speech. And then under each possible type of visual aid, explain why you think the visual aid will be effective. And then also identify possible drawbacks for using each of the visual aids, and then talk about how you would attempt to overcome the drawbacks. Submit that to the Dropbox attached below. And then next you're going to be working with methods of persuasion. So this is really digging into logic and reasoning, using emotion, and then stages of credibility. So for this activity, you are going to watch 3 different commercials and then attempt to identify how ethos, pathos, and logos was being used. So ethos, pathos, and logos is the credibility, logos is the evidence, reasoning, fallacies, pathos is the motivations and emotions. So you'll be reading about those in chapter 17, and then based upon that, you'll be looking at different commercials and attempting to identify how each of those methods of persuasion was being used. So how was ethos, which is credibility, how was that being used in the commercial? And then you'll just kind of go through logos and pathos. And then lastly, how the commercial is compelling. So this is not really your opinion on whether it was or was not compelling. You're attempting to just answer how was the commercial attempting to be compelling. So going back to our listening skills, we're not making opinions here. We're not stating facts. We're actually exploring inferences. So best guess statements based upon what we've learned and what we know, and combining the two together. So type those up, save them on your computer or your USB, and then submit to the Dropbox, again by Sunday, 11:59 p.m. And then lastly, you're going to take your final quiz, assessing you on your comprehension of what you were reading in the textbook. So we had 3 chapters. So you're going to have 30 questions. 15 questions are multiple choice. 15 questions are true and false. You're allowed multiple attempts up until the due date or until you reach 100 to take the quiz, but it will be due by Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Then we've got reminders for the lesson. Those are just reminding you, like a checklist of sorts, making sure you've gotten everything done that needs to be done in this lesson. And then congratulations, you've completed lesson 7, and you can move on to your final lesson, which will be delivering your persuasive speech. As you work through this, please feel free to email, call, or stop by with any questions that you have if you're on the Claremont campus. I am happy to help any way that I can. Keep up the good work, scholars.